Buckets. That's the name of my boat. Buckets.
Buckets. What we get.
Not the only transfer we got from Florida. Keith Stone, too. Remember that.
Everybody who watches his show on a regular basis knows my love of the stretch four.
You know, we all make mistakes. He might have made one going to
Mercy
Tallahassee.
if y'all don't know. Dribble to the left, cross over to the right. Hurricane to the game, many buckets for the night. Matt with the pick and roll, Melissa with the give and go. This Shally-oo, hoodie girl dunking in the hole. Check the scoreboard, this what we fall for. Beat the gameplay, they want an encore. Yeah, overtime for another round. It's buckets out the buckets, baby. You out of time. It's buckets. What it is, homie, it's buckets. Woo! We get buckets. Yeah, baby, buckets.
I have no shame.
I know. That's the problem.
You guys are awesome.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to an emergency edition of the Buckets podcast. I'm Matt. He's Vish. Melissa, unfortunately, could not join us. She's got work today.
Yeah, she was on lockdown a little bit, did a quick hit there if you're
Yeah.
interested in her thoughts.
Yeah, if you want to see her thoughts, and I know she's tweeted some stuff out. So big news today, Vish.
Yeah, a little bit of news day. Yeah.
I woke up. So I woke up late today. I didn't have work, and I've been feeling under the weather. So I slept in, and I wake up to all these messages, and I'm like, what is going on? And check my phone, see the news feed on Twitter. So what were your immediate thoughts?
Yeah,
the news hit.
I mean, I had put on. I was about to go for a run. I had put my shoes on and just glanced at my phone, and that ended that. I mean, we spent. I think we all felt, this was inevitable.
Yeah.
I know you weren't able to make the show on Monday, and well, fortunately, the Barons are kicking butt. So your time is getting occupied by winning basketball games. But I think we all kind of felt it was getting to the end here. I think we all also thought it would be the end of the year that it would happen. I think we all felt, coming to the end of the year that it would happen then and not now. But we did spend an entire section on the show on Monday kind of talking about how this was over. And we're not usually the fire the coach show, but I think it just felt inevitable.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it was surprising the timing, but I think we'd all kind of arrived there already.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, is in the same boat. I don't think we really need to go over the individual games this season and everything, but like it just kind of, you could feel the vibe, and I don't know, man. I still thought it was going to be something that happened at the end of the season. I don't know how.
Yeah, no, the timing definitely. I thought, end of the season, he would maybe, towards the end of the season announce that it's his last season and he was going to coach out. And Melissa and I were at that overtime loss to Mount St. Mary's on Saturday. Never thought that would be the last time we saw him.
Yeah.
Saw him. I actually, ironically, because Melissa and I like try to plan these things out when we're going to games together and stuff. I had originally was flying back from DC on Saturday night, and I moved my flight to the morning. This was like a month ago, before the season went off the rails. So like, we'll go to the last game before Christmas. There's not going to be a game for like the whole time in town. So let's go to that one. So I moved to the morning so we could go to that game. Little did I know that was that was a historic event, it turns out. Because that was it.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I feel like I'm still kind of not in shock, but like it hasn't really hit me that because from my perspective, and this feels like I'm taking a shot at you, but I'm not.
No, I know exactly what you're saying, because I was going to ask you about this. Let me see if I can guess that, for you, he's the only coach you've known here.
He's the only coach I've known.
Right.
He's the one that really got me into Miami Hurricane basketball because, I mean, I think like any other fan, I started out as a fan of the football team, right? And then basketball kind of grew on me. And just like his demeanor and like how much his players loved him and respected him and stuff is kind of like what got me into coaching in the past, and something that, contributed to me coming back coaching as well. And it's definitely going to be weird for me seeing anyone but him coaching the University of Miami basketball program. And
Yeah, and just for people's awareness, we're not doing the who should be the next coach show. This is about Coach
Yeah.
L. And we will talk about his press conference and a little bit more current events probably in the back half of the show, but we certainly wanted to start with, and you can kind of see in the chat, what he's meant to the program. And yeah, I mean, it is tough. I mean, even though we all knew it was, I mean, again, the timing was not what we expected, but I think we all, and you could actually see that in our last win, how frustrated he was in the press conference there too. Even with some of the questions, I think he kind of at that point even knew, there was no fixing this. He's been talking a lot about the defense and rebounding issues, and they keep cropping up. And I think he just decided, I don't want to do this anymore. And it's hard because, as you said, he's not just any coach. He's a teacher of the game, and this is what he, there are people get into coaching for different reasons, right? And like you said, this is a guy who teaches and he just loves being around the game. So can you imagine, driving him to that decision to walk away in the middle of the season, like to walk off that court after that overtime loss on Saturday and decide, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah, I mean, you can imagine how he internalized that, and yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's as Bill's, friend of the show, Bill, is saying, it is a sad day for the university, but we do want to take some time to, I mean, not that there's really a positive spin on anything right now, but do talk about just the remarkable career he's had here, not just here. He took George Pace to the Final Four as well, but
I mean, one of the, like, when
ahead.
people talk about Cinderellas, like, that's the one Cinderella in the history of like the tournament that everyone talks about. So, I mean, he took two teams to a Final Four, and I mean, two teams that I mean, Miami basketball was in a different place for a long time, right? So
yeah, and I think, look, so this is yeah, I mean, we are in for, I mean, who knows what. Again, we're not going to really talk about the future,
we don't.
But talking about the his tenure here, he is such. I just want to caution people. He was so incredibly successful to an extent that we should not reasonably expect our basketball program to be at. And I know in his press conference, we'll talk about that in a lot more detail in the second half of the show. He did talk about, this should be a national championship caliber program. Yeah. Matt, this is the only coach Matt has known at UM. It's not the only coach I've known, and I gotta tell you, one of the reasons we get really defensive when people, it's not that we're not seeing what's happening on the court, the second half of last year and this year. It's that I saw what happened on the court when he wasn't the coach, and like the idea that you're competing on the regular with Duke and North Carolina, you're going into the Dean Smith Dome, you're going into Cameron Indoor and walking out of there with wins. That's insane.
Yeah, he had one of the best records against Duke, right? Out of any
multiple regular season championships, winning the ACC tournament. Obviously,
four
Sweet 16. Yeah, four total. Total. Two ended there. One ended in the Elite Eight. One ended in the Final Four. I mean, this is unfathomable at our school, and I mean, it's hard to articulate what he's done here and done so. And just real quick to end that point up. Done so while being a pillar of the community, doing things above the board, really, leaving an imprint off the court as well. Just a remarkable tenure.
Yeah. Question for you. I've meant to look this up. How many tournament appearances has he had compared to like how the program has had in total? Like how many is he responsible?
Well, I mean, So with Miami, it's always two eras. Hold on, I had this open and I just closed it right before we started. I don't know why I did that. Here, I got it. Oh, it was in my recently closed. So he made the NCAA tournament. Looks like 7 times.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Haith made it 1 time. Perry Clark made it 1 time. Leonard Hamilton made it 3 times.
Wow.
And Leonard Hamilton, took over a program that was basically started from scratch in the mid 80s, and he took it over after a few other coaches, but he kind of built it into a team that could compete. But he made the tournament 3 years in a row with largely the same core of players. So he never had to reinvent himself the way that, and frankly, the residuals of that with John Salmons and James Jones is how Perry Clark made the tournament. He basically took the leftovers and made it. So that was a great team. We never saw Leonard Hamilton have to, let me rebuild this team and go at it again the way Coach L has done over multiple times. And Frank Haith went 500 in the ACC, once and wheezed into the tournament on the back of Jack McClinton, making every shot on the court. So, I mean, that was what was success back then. And there were credibly people, just to contextualize where Coach L inherited this program, that were saying, like, you can't fire Frank Haith. Obviously, Missouri ended up hiring him because, like, what do you expect to do at Miami? He's gone 500 once. He's made an NCAA tournament. You expect to do better than that? And then Coach L's first year, he went 9-7 in the ACC. Second year, won the tournament. Won the conference and the tournament. That is just, again, I think people are, for people like you, Matt, who this is the coach you've known, although I know you have a little bit better historical context than maybe a lot of our fans do. It's been a dream, essentially, for 15 years of achieving things on a basketball court we should not be able to as a program, to just be blunt about it. And yeah, we still hope for the future and all that, but yeah, he's just a remarkable coach in person, and it's going to be missed.
Yeah. Man, I think of like all the, like you spoke earlier about, obviously I wasn't as, my era really started, what was it, like 11-12 season or 12-13? I guess it was kind of right before 12-13 season. But like, just historically, like what he did with, like what you said, continuously like rebuilding, retooling, like what he was doing. Like, when you see like the team back in 2012, 2013, Shane Larkin, Kenny Kaji, Julian Gamble, shout out Julian Gamble, and Durant Scott, shout out the, Buckets alum. With that team, we always talk about how far they could have gone if, Shane Larkin didn't have food poisoning and such. But going from there to like, all the other teams with my boy, Damon Reed, Angel Rodriguez, and then Sheldon McClellan, and then, the Final Four Elite Eight teams. He's coached so many and developed so many good players and good teams. It's crazy to think about.
Right. And yeah, to your point, there's like distinct eras of success.
Yeah.
In a short period of time, right? There's mentioned the 2013 team, which, had Larkin and all those guys, and the Angel Rodriguez, Sheldon Matt team. Then unfortunately this one ended, at the buzzer in the first round, but there was that Bruce Brown, Lonnie Walker era.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's another.
And then even the Elite Eight and Final Four teams, very different. Turned over most of the starting rotation, and still advanced the ball one step further. It's his ability to do that, and that's kind of what's sad about this is he went, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in the back half, but he reached for it one more time, and he couldn't do that this time. And he tried, and you could tell him acknowledging, I failed, is what he said, and it was hard to watch him acknowledge that. I think we're all seeing what's happening on the court, but, it doesn't diminish anything of what he's done here. And yeah, it's his remarkable ability to continue to just reinvent his program, his team. I mean, that 2013 team, like you said, I still think that's the only team we've had that could have actually won the national championship.
Yeah.
The other ones ran into better team. That Lonnie Walker, Bruce Brown team, that fluky end of game sequence, they might have even made the Final Four off of that because Loyola did.
Yeah.
But that team was still not the best team in the country. The 2013 team probably was.
Yeah.
And calamity, not just Larkin with the food poisoning. Duran Scott, I think, broke his jaw or something.
Yeah.
Reggie Johnson hurt his knee again and was out for the year. Going into that game, you gotta, that tournament's a crapshoot. You got to be hitting it at the right time, and we didn't at that point. But the other team that really was one of the best teams in the country was the '98 team, actually, with Leonard Hamilton, that actually lost in the second round, got upset by Purdue. The team that made the Sweet 16 was actually worse. But that team, the problem back in that era is, and I'm sure Coach L will appreciate this, players stayed 3 or 4 years. So that team was a 2 seed, the one that lost in the second round. But Duke and Connecticut, I think, lost a total of 3 games that year. One of the Connecticut games was to us. We beat them in Stores as the only home game. They lost the entire year. But there was no way we were beating both those teams. They were running out 4 and 5 NBA players. So back then you could build like a really great team. You just couldn't. But those players stuck together for 4 years. So that might be actually the best, just core of players because they played together over that many years and then kind of built that up and then freaking blew it to Brian Cardinal in the tournament. But that's the tournament, right? But the 2013 team legitimately, yeah, they could have beaten anyone that was playing basketball that year. And losing to a bad Marquette team is certainly not great.
Let me ask you, Vish, what's
Yeah.
your favorite memory from the Larinaga era?
Oh, that's so tough. I mean, I haven't even had a chance to reflect on this. God. Do you have one off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's for me, like, just because I go back and watch that game and it, like, I mean, I get we had the Final Four, Elite Eight. I think those are, but if I had to pick one game, man, actually there'd be 2. It would be the Texas game to get to the Final Four, but also, man, that Duke game back in 2013, like I still rewatch it all the time.
Yeah, and that's a great shout because you can actually see it when you rewatch it. Like we're ranked 25th. We weren't supposed to be that good.
Yeah.
We struggled a little in the early season. We felt we were playing well, and then when we just unloaded on that team, it's like, holy crap, we're actually good. This is not.
Yeah. We lost to what, like Florida Gulf Coast,
who ended up making the Sweet 16.
Yeah,
also,
we didn't know.
But we didn't know. Yeah.
And then we lost to who else did we lose to? There was someone else we lost to. Like
there were some bad losses. Yeah. There were some losses that they use as an excuse to give us a 2 seed instead of the 1 seed actually, but. Yeah, that was kind of the announcement of holy crap, we can play. And that was the first of many wipeouts at home because we blew North Carolina off the court too. Yeah, that, and again, for those that I mean, this is more than 10 years ago, so you're not even newer Canes fans. If you weren't around before, oh yeah, there it is. Hashim laid it out there. Indiana State in the Hawaii tournament. Yeah, and so if you weren't there before Coach Al, which again, I don't want to say if you're a new fan because we're literally talking 15 years now. It's unfathomable that you could compete in that. In fact, our first year in the ACC with Frank Haith, he took over when Harry Clark was fired after our last season in the Big East. It was like a clean break. We started in the ACC. We started Frank Haith. That we hosted Duke that year, and the commentators kept saying, "This is the biggest game in Miami school history." And I'm like, "Well, first of all, it's not. We had actually won the Big East, so no." but also, like again, like they're just being on the court with Duke. Forget that they blew us out in that game. Just being out on the court with them was like, wow. And the fact that you're just regularly beating them, as CCH pointed out, even last year, that team was coming apart and still took UNC to the buzzer in UNC and played them tight at home. Like that level, I know the last 2 years have been rough, but that level of competitiveness, it's not always been the case. There's been a lot of ugly losses before it was here, blowouts, non-competitive basketball that, he always got the team out there. Yeah, that alley-oop off the backboard is, I think, the famous that, and then going back down on defense and slapping the floor, that whole sequence. Yeah, I never answered your question. Let me stall a little bit more to share. Actually, I'll answer your question. I'll share Melissa's thoughts, and she did ask us to show something. But God, this one for whatever reason always stuck out to me. It was Jaquan Newton throwing the ball in against Carolina from 3/4 court.
Oh, yeah.
At the buzzer, when there was still 2 seconds of the clock, and he let it go, and he definitely could have dribbled further. But I guess he's like,
let it fly.
I got the range from here. Because and obviously, I went to all the tournament games. We made the Final Four. I did alter travel plans to transit through Chicago and watch us lose the Kansas Elite Eight game. Those are oh man, those are still dream sequences for me. Like you mentioned, the Texas game, I experienced that completely differently because I was there, and just the way we played poorly in that game.
Yeah,
we couldn't make shots. We had all these open shots we kept missing. We made that comeback without making threes, and so the whole time you're like, got to make some shots here. We're never going to get back into this. And we just ground them down and won the game without really shooting well. And it's a remarkable, if you watch that game, it's remarkable we won that game playing like that. Because we were a pace and space team, and we could not make anything, and we just gutted that game out. That is Coach L's masterpiece. That whole tournament run, from pressing against Drake when the team was coming apart there, to exploiting the best players on other teams like Houston and Indiana were no jokes. A lot of those guys are in the NBA now, and just attacking every single game. That run, he figured it out. It's a coaching masterpiece of a run, but it's hard for me to separate one of those games out and say that's a moment. But that moment when Jaquan threw that ball in from the whole thing, Bruce Brown hopping across the court on one leg and getting into the dog pile, the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
That whole sequence of, because we had a big lead. That was a game where Abuko Azundu went off, and if you look at this, he just scored a bunch of points. We got this huge lead. They kept coming back, and we busted a coverage. I think it was Joel Berry hit a 3 to tie it after we'd been leading the whole game, and we just had to get one more stop.
Joel Berry, man.
And this was also, it was a UNC game, so you can imagine the officiating at Carolina, especially, even when we played at home, it's bad. But this is so their comeback was essentially just them calling a bunch of fouls on us getting into foul trouble, having to sub people. And then we were sitting there, up 3, just had to see it out. And we shouldn't have left them open for 3, and we should have probably fouled, but hits the 3. The place is going in, so we throw it into Kwon. He gets shot at the whole thing. He shoots it with way too much time on the clock. There's actually a chance for a hit-ahead pass. He could have shot it 2 even, but I guess he had the range from there, so he pulls up, it goes in. I remember jumping up and down, just stream of profanities coming out of my mouth. And then again, you see the dot pile, and obviously with the Bruce Brown was injured, so he's you can see him in the dot pile with his leg and a boot sticking out. It was one of those moments. Yeah, and again though, just even just on a intellectual level, competing with Carolina, it's just amazing at basketball. It's probably what people think when they beat us in football, to be honest. I can't believe we're competing with Miami. It's the other way around with our basketball program.
Yeah. I think too the cool thing
and the free throws, Hashim. We made a ton of free throws. We ground that game down.
I mean, Jordan Miller made he was 11-11 from the free throw line.
Yeah, he played a perfect game.
Yeah, crazy. But I think too, the cool thing about March Madness is all the extra attention that you get once you make it a certain point in the tournament. And so all the interviews and stuff that you got to see with him and whatnot, that's kind of one thing I'll always remember. And the post-game dancing, I can't remember which, it was a lot of the years.
It was more than once. Yeah.
Yeah, it was more than once. But just a ton of memories from those runs. In particular, the Final Four and Elite Eight.
Yeah, to Sheem's point, 27 of 41 from 2, which is 66% in the game, 2 of 8 from 3, 28 of 32 from the free throw line. That's how we won that game. Just completely different from how we won games the entire year, because we weren't a great free throw shooting team, largely. And yeah, we would win because we'd shoot so many threes. Not that we weren't a bad. I think we were fine percentage-wise. We weren't a high-volume team shooting 32. It's definitely an anomaly for us. Making 28, that was just, it's one of those. But again, we won all of those games playing differently in each game. Just really just remarkable coaching there, because I think that and we'll talk about this a little bit. It does feel like, that was kind of the end of it, though. No, it's a tough day, but we're lucky. We're lucky we frankly that he hired himself. If you're familiar with the history of how he got hired, it was he basically wanted, and he talked about this today, right? His dream was always to coach in the ACC. The job was open. He wanted it. Yeah. So he backchanneled. His son's obviously a longtime NBA assistant coach. Had connections, was able to work connections to get his name in there, and they're like, of course, our school didn't know who he was. Only been in the Final Four, but so he sent them his Wikipedia page because they asked, like, does he have a resume or any kind of back? So it's like, coach has a resume. It's like, I don't have a resume. He sent them his Wikipedia page, and that was like the beginning of, I think, obviously we hope that yeah, exactly, they'll use his Wikipedia page. I think hopefully we'll look back on this as the foundation that we can build out of, but there's also, I would say, a decent likelihood that we're going to look at this as the golden age of Canes basketball, and it's because of this man. I mean, there's no one else that would have been able to do this. And just well, I mean, boy, she kills me. Let me show this. So this is Melissa's thoughts. Basically, all of her T-shirts from all the various runs. I mean, this is actually a great encapsulation of his success. You got Sweet 16s, you got ACC championships, you got Final Fours, you got Elite Eight. It's just, and I don't know how well this is showing up on everyone else's screen versus mine, but you'll see all the different years in there because it happens so frequently. So just a remarkable, and obviously she was on lockdown early if you want to get more of her thoughts there, but I think we're all three are kind of one mind that, end of an era. It's a sad day, but it's a good date also. It's the holidays, reflect on what's a remarkable, and again, as great a coach, better ambassador for the program. Like you said, all those interviews with him and him being the face of this program has done wonders for this program.
Absolutely.
I think that doesn't even get into his insane levels of basketball success.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, you got any more thoughts here before you hit some underdog, and then we'll talk about this press conference. Maybe a little bit forward looking, but we're not going to start naming coaches. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, hit it.
All right, let's do this. The last time, by the way, our sponsor's going away. So,
that bouncing ball can only mean one thing: it's time to hoop. And with Underdog Fantasy, you can play higher or lower on all your favorite players, like Miami's own Tim Hardaway Jr. I love Underdog's Win Now feature, which lets you cash out whenever you want. So join over 5 million fans that are already playing on Underdog. And with their Pick'em game, you could win money by making entries with your favorite players. Download the app today and use code 5REASONS to get up to $1,000 in bonus cast instantly. That's UnderdogFantasy.com and the offer code 5REASONS to get up to $1,000 in bonus cast. That is FIVEREASONS. Must be 18 or older, 19 or older in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 or older in Colorado for some games, 21 or older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
All right, so I guess we both watched the press conference. We wanted to talk about that a little bit since that is news. So we didn't want to start with
Mhm.
talking heavily about Coach L and his contributions, but I guess I'll just do a brief timeline of what he said transpired, and then we'll go through it.
Yeah, I will say too, there was parts, I don't know if it cut out for you, where like audio cut
My
out.
audio was
So-
fine. I saw a bunch of people complaining. There was one brief skip ahead when he was thanking people. He thanked, I think, a few people, and then he was talking about something, and then it kind of jumped a little bit when he was still
Okay.
talking about. That was the only thing that I noticed that skipped. But basically, timeline-wise, after the game on Saturday, he had essentially decided he was done. He
Melissa.
hey, look who's. By the way, if you want to join from phone, you do have a link. So basically, timeline-wise, he talked about Saturday. Basically, he thought he was done. He actually notably said there's people he always talks to: his family, his wife, and his kids, and his sports psychologist. And he said he did not talk to a sports psychologist on purpose because he didn't want to be talked out of the decision. Informed the school on Sunday. They tried to convince him to say Radakovich went into some detail on how he tried to sell him on staying. Then on Monday, they asked him, "Hey, please think about this. Don't just resign." So they asked him to think about it again and get back to them on Monday. And on Monday, he confirmed the decision. So they obviously the announcement was made. Well, the rumors leaked out this morning, and the press conference this afternoon. But that was the timeline. So it's really coming out of the last game. And I do wonder. One of the things we talked about in our Buckets chat was, hey, no press conference after that game. I think he just basically, I'm done, and just kind of, because normally even after losses, they do a press conference and they talk, and he always very good with media availability, as Matt alluded to earlier. And there was nothing after that game that was like formally done. So I guess that's the timeline. Matt, anything stand out to you from that press conference or that? I guess where do you want to start? It's going to be a pretty long segment, I think. But where do you want to start?
I think the biggest thing is him talking about NIL, right? I mean,
yeah, and I that's definitely and actually Radakovich talked about that. So anyway, Radakovich talked about that before he even brought Coach L up. So yeah, I guess we'll start there then.
I think the first thing, I guess this is kind of chronological in order, is like that he had mentioned that he had thoughts of this after the Final Four run, when 8 of the guys told him in a team meeting that they were going to enter the portal to find a new team for, more NIL or whatever. I mean, one just shows the era of, I was going to say college basketball, but college athletics, like where we're at. But two, it sounds like, that was getting too much for him to deal with, and that he was just kind of done with that.
Yeah, and he did, and I referenced a little bit earlier in the show, he did talk about how this should be a national championship level program. He thought we were getting there, and I think that was basically dumping a bucket of cold water. Because he's reached this height of, we're in the Final Four, we can build out of this. Like he's always envisioned Miami as a program where you can win national championships. Again, I'm not sure I agree with him on that, just to be honest, from the honest conversation here, but he's viewed it that way, and he felt it building, right? Been to the Sweet 16 multiple times now, Elite Eight, then Final Four, and I think that was maybe the first time since he's been here that he actually maybe felt it wasn't attainable. He's like, if I can't keep it, and he did say, he talked to the players like, "What, are you not happy?" He's like, "No, we are happy here, just money, right?" And so, and I think that was probably, like you said, the beginning of the end for him in his head, where he's like, okay, maybe if I can't keep together a Final Four team, and these kids want to leave a Final Four team, how am I ever going to build the way, and he talked a lot about this too, the way he knows to build, which is over years, coaching people up, getting them to reach their heights at the right time. How am I going to do that if no one will stick around for me to be able to do that?
Yeah. Well, and that's true. I mean, how if the part of the game that he loves the most is the development and seeing these guys grow, if guys are happy here, they're improving, and they're still kind of just looking to go elsewhere, how's he really accomplishing, what he really wants to, what he really enjoys and really what he likes to do? Because I mean, at the end of the day, now in college basketball, you're like recruiting your guys that are on your roster every
Yeah.
year.
And well, so I do want to dig into that a little bit because I do think there's some. So I will say there's a little bit of revision. I'm sure that's how it played out in his mind. You could actually get the sense, and I don't know if you got this from him, that I feel like he enjoyed that Elite Eight run more than the Final Four run. The way he was talking about it and talking about how these guys came in and they all bought in. Because frankly, the same guys that went to the Final Four are the same ones that then opted out or stayed here and quiet quit. Right. And so so I do think he probably looks back on that Elite Eight team maybe more fondly than even the Final Four one when you talk about.
Yeah, well, when he referenced Sam Wardenberg and Charlie Moore, and then he didn't really
and
reference
Cam
anyone.
McGutsky,
Yeah,
and the ones that he did reference were Wong and Miller, who were also on that team.
Yeah.
Right? He didn't mention, and we're maybe reading too much into that, but I feel like if you got him with the on the lie detector and asked him what his favorite team was, I think he would say the Elite Eight team and not the Final Four one. But with that said, I do think there is a little bit of revisionist history because something. All right, we've actually talked about this a lot, right? Last year, we were in the tournament in February. We'd blown out Virginia Tech, and we'd won that Bahamas tournament easily. And I know it was in like a hotel ballroom and all that, but like those games weren't competitive though. We can't beat anyone like that now. And things were going relatively, like they weren't as good as we thought they were going to be when remember we went to Kentucky as like a top 10 team. Like they weren't that good, but we were in the tournament. We were playing reasonable basketball, and the bottom fell out of that season. Part of it was injuries. Part of it was a lot of other things happened, right? But it wasn't, the Final Four and then everything. It was really, I mean, we are 4 and I think the number's 4-18 in our last 22 games. Like it fell out last year. It was not like it was not like the Final Four was the inflection point. So I mean, it's a little bit. Again, it's hard when you're going through his memory. I'm sure for him that was his first signs of it happening, but he actually, he did hold the team together reasonably well. We did bring back Wooga and Norchad, right? We added and then obviously Nigel as well. So there was like a base there. We added Matthew Cleveland, and again, we weren't playing as well as we wanted to play, but we were right in there. And then we weren't. We lost 10 games in a row to end the season. So it is a little bit of a different, story. And then he did, he basically said, again, one of the things I've always appreciated about him, you saw this in the press conference, it's just blunt. Yeah, I failed. My job it's not the players' it's my job to get them to perform. I don't know how to do that anymore, was basically what he said. And he also talked about, last year was a disaster. And you rarely hear coaches speak, like we said that on the show, but you rarely hear coaches speak that bluntly, like, yeah, that thing was a shit show. Like we screwed it up. It was bad. And then obviously he thought, okay, we're going to move on from there. We're going to be better this year. And we've obviously gotten worse even. So I think that was probably part of his, also is just like, all right, I can't, it did sound towards the end of the press conference like he was kind of, I'm out of ideas. Played all these different lineups. Nothing's working. I don't know what to do with this team.
Yeah. I mean,
again, I do think. Well, this is part of what I wanted to get your thoughts on. Again,
okay.
This is his self acknowledgement of not, him saying blame. I think he's blaming NIL, and it certainly has changed the game. But I to your point, he's struggling to adapt to that, and there are multiple approaches to that. But I'm not sure what and we've talked a lot about like what's going on with the lineups and shows this year. So also we have opinions on it, but it was kind of a weird approach. So when he's saying like, one of the problems I have is these people come in here and maybe they're lying, maybe they're not. But they're saying there's this much money need to get this guy or that guy. I am honestly a little confounded that he chose to play that game of chasing the big money guys, because not everyone's getting $1 million, right? They're talking about like top 5 players. So like he kept referencing $1 million, right? So he's choosing to chase that and then talking about, well, I can't coach these guys. And then if you look at the guys we brought in, most of them don't have eligibility past this year that he went and got out of the portal. Like if he's, to me, it was a little bit contradictory, and I want to get your thoughts on this, that he's talking about how I'd really like to coach, people like to teach them. And that's what I love about the game. I can't do that anymore because everything's portal based. It's like 1 year cycles now. And yet he went in there and got a bunch of guys that are graduate transfers that don't have time left, that even if he wanted that option, couldn't do. He got a high school player well, probably not anymore, but was a one and done before we got our hands on him, right? To me, that's contradictory because I don't think that other part of basketball doesn't exist anymore. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that overall? Kind of, I just said a lot, so
I know.
Tackle whatever you want.
I'm going to try to go through. Okay. I think, I don't know how specific I want to get with this, but about like NIL negotiations. I feel like, and this is just like speculation, I don't know anything, obviously.
Well, hold on, stop there. So just so everyone to be clear, we're just giving opinions and spec. We don't.
Yeah.
So
we have no idea.
Yeah.
I feel like that there was one negotiation, like in the off season, that probably aged him a lot because of the stress and just how much it was to deal with. I don't know if I want to name a specific name. I don't feel like it's important, but I think that was really a contributing factor. And I think that's probably what that this individual was he was referencing when he said the $1 million thing.
Yeah. And well, I know who you're talking about. I'm sure people can read between the lines there, but I do think there was a point in the time we actually talked about this on the show at the time where he just drew a line and was like, yeah, okay. You're not going to name him at that point. But I think at one point he did kind of draw a line in the sand and just say, like, you're not coming back to him and to the players currently at Villanova, because they both on the same day all of a sudden said, all right, we're leaving.
Yeah.
Right. And that I think that was part of what you're saying. He'd had enough. He's like, you know what, we're done with this, and drew a line in the sand. But I guess as Bill points out, the boozers, I think I understand that broke him, and obviously Norch is someone he plucked from. Now I named him, but whatever. Sick to give away. But that's somebody. No, but that's somebody plucked from Arkansas State, right? And I think he felt like there was some loyalty due his way, that he didn't receive. So
I think with Wooga too, even
I think Wooga a little bit less.
It was a guy that was under recruited though. That like he, I think he saw him as a guy like, all right, like he's really developed here.
But Wooga also is from a basketball hotbed, and I think it's a little bit. I'm not disagreeing with you, especially I think Wooga in particular last year, that 10-game winning streak when he was not playing games, Nigel was out there limping around on one leg and he was just sitting on the bench injured, and I think that probably graded Coach Hill as well, because I think, again, reading between the lines, and we don't know anything for sure, I think Coach Hill felt he could play in some of those games, and he was kind of like, no, I'm hurt. But I do think, again, if we didn't go get Norchad from Arkansas State, he would still be on that level of program. Wooga is from Philly, so as much as we elevated him to the ACC, elevated a star that allowed him to go to Nova because they didn't want him out of right. I mean, it wasn't like
I don't know, because Norchad was connected to like Kentucky, like to some other programs and stuff. even though he was out of
no
State.
one would have gotten him the level of notoriety he ended up getting, which partially he earned.
Yeah,
it,
his
right?
role would have been different.
Yeah, and with that different role, does he, is he going to end up? We've had players transfer and then transfer again to a smaller school after they've, bounced around, because if you don't. Coach L took him from Arkansas State and built a team that perfectly accentuated his abilities, and he basically, to your point, I don't think he felt the loyalty coming back on that. But my question here, as Bill kind of points out the boozers, is what I don't understand, and this is the part that's kind of confusing to me about Coach L's stance / approach. I understand what you're saying about how he invested time and energy in coaching these players up in the past. Again, referencing the difference between the Elite Eight team and the Final Four team. Those Elite Eight players, some of them had been with us for several years. Remember, Rodney Miller was still kicking around on the team. Like there's kind of an expectation of that two-way loyalty, and he categorized this under truthfulness and not where players lie about what NIL offers. And this was not about any of our players. Just to be clear, this is a different subject, not about Sikkim. This is, he talked about how a recruit that only ended up here, that came to him and said, I have $1 million offer. What can you give me? He's like, get out of my office, essentially. It's probably over the phone or whatever, but like, no, we're not playing in that game. Turns out the guy signed $100,000. He was just lying. So I think that he categorized under that, but I think he expected some of that two-way loyalty that he didn't receive. My question is, we're talking about the boozers, right? We're talking about $1 million NIL deals. Miami's never played in that game. We've never like Jaleel is the highest recruit in the history of the school, and you got to go back to Lonnie Walker, to another guy that was even speculated as a first-round pick coming in. Mm-hmm. So I don't understand why he felt I need to play that game instead of doing what he's always done, which is, hey, we'll play a smaller game, and then they will stick around. If you pluck not the elite recruits and give them some, you still can develop them. Schools are still doing that. So it's almost like we're doing both things at once. We're talking about we need to be able to build the core and develop, while also trying to throw bags around and like go with Kentucky and Duke and North Carolina and get the same players and try to get the players they're trying to get. We've never done that. And so I don't understand why we tried to do both things at once. I don't know what the market for Lynn Kidd or Brandon Johnson was, or even Matthew Cleveland last year. But we've never been we got to get all the, blue chip recruits. So I don't know why we almost like we tried to do everything at the same time and it blew up. Because there's an alternate universe where, especially this summer, where he looks at what happened. He said, you know what? We're going to invest in our younger players. We have a good freshman class coming in, and we're going to get, some, sophomores, maybe some juniors to bring in as transfer and try to build a core together. Yes, some of these kids will leave, but not all of them will. And so you can have like Austin Schwartz and Johnson Arrigo and Devine, going to their second year, having played together with some of these sophomores and juniors we got out of the portal, and grow the roster the same way he's done in the past. Instead, got all these one and done guys, right? That only have like a year left to play in college. And I don't understand what the approach is there. Maybe I'm missing something, but I don't. The what he was talking about in the press conference, I totally agree. NIL has changed everything. He's having to have these, as he phrased it, ridiculous conversations with agents about like, you got to get this much money to be in the game with this kid. But we've never been in the game with those kids. Why do we have to be in the game with those kids now? That's the part that doesn't, make sense to me when he starts talking about the transfers he's brought in the past. Like, you think there'd be a big back thrown around for Charlie Moore right now? Like, if it was 5 years later or whatever it is, or actually 3 years later, probably not. He'd bounced around so much that he just needed an opportunity to play, right? And that's why I'm so confused as to why if that was how he felt about the way that the NIL, his difficulty in coaching the way he wants to coach, why are we playing in that game? It was the same conversation we've been having about Jaleel. If you don't want to start a true freshman, I get it. What you do works. You have had an ungodly amount of success here. then don't go get the top 5 recruit that you know you have to play. It's like a confused approach. Because you can absolutely still do what he wants to do, which is, hey, we're going to go after mid-level recruits that we know are going to stick around longer. We're going to hit the portal for the secondary kids that have multiple years left. Maybe they went to a big school, or maybe they went to a mid-major and had a good year and now they're coveted, or maybe they went to a big school and they didn't play a lot, but we liked them out of high school. That's Charlie Moore. He liked out of high school like 6 years before he ended up on campus, right? Those kids are still there. So to me, it's just been confusing. The whole thing was confusing. He's explaining it. Everything he's saying is true, right? About how NIL has changed the game, how it's difficult to navigate and all that. But I don't feel like he necessarily responded to that well, or really addressed the way he wanted to coach. Because I don't think we've actually tried in the NIL era doing what he wants, which is let's bring in some kids that want to play and I'll coach them up. Instead, we've been chasing the bag. We've been throwing it around everywhere. We've paid up top dollar, right? And you didn't have to do that. I don't know. Any thoughts on again? I just rambled, but
yeah, I don't know what to make of it. I understand, you bring up a good point of like he brings in all these guys that, don't really have years to develop, Lynn Kidd, Brandon Johnson.
I mean, just on Lynn Kidd, remember, and we were kind of
joking.
We were joking about this when in the preseason, like the interviews, they do little open practices and you can interview the players.
Yeah.
They asked him what his major was. He's not even going to class. I mean, this is he was like, I don't really have one. I'm here to play basketball. And it's kind of like you didn't have to get. And this is not a knock on Lynn Kidd or Brandon or any of the guys we've got. It's just that what Coach L is articulating, which I think is accurate, is there's a mismatch between the roster that's been assembled and what he's looking to accomplish. And like, you assembled that roster intentionally, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just not seeing the big picture because everyone, and I mean everyone.
The only thought that I shared with you was that maybe he knew that this was going to be his last year. And he's like, let me just try to compete in the ACC, add some veteran guys. Obviously, if you add underclassmen, it's going to take some years to be able to compete at that level. So, I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, because it is like what you said of like, it feels like he was trying to go both routes almost, but more so leaning to the, not developing guys, trying to play the game of, let's just get guys that can play, throw money around and, see if we can be successful.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And we talked about this. I used some colorful language in the chat. No, it is. Look, as we all age, we disconnect from. Look, we're not in college anymore, and we're not like people in college anymore. We don't view the world the same way. And as we get older, this applies to me, it applies to Matt, it applies to Melissa, it certainly applies to Coach L as well. You drift. It's remarkable he's been able to connect with them for this long. But can we
talk about the end? What he said?
Which part?
When he was like, "Oh, like last year we took the guys to see Hamilton.
Oh yeah,
none of them liked it."
Yeah, and he was talking about one of the great, Broadway shows of all time, and they were not interested. And I mean, you see this a lot. Like, here's an example with my niece yesterday. We were watching Christmas Story, and it's on normal TV, and she keeps taking the remote and trying to fast forward the commercials because they stream everything, and they never have to sit through commercials. I'm just like, sorry, you guys sit there and watch this. We got to wait for it to come back from break. And it's just, I mean, this is a bit, those are trivial examples. Hamilton's a trivial example, but I think the story is not that he, doesn't appear to be able to connect with them anymore. And that was an example of it. It's that he was able to do so for this long. Because I don't. And I'm like 30 years, 20 years younger than him, whatever it is. And like, I can't connect with the college students anymore. I don't know how the hell he's been doing it this long, but I do think there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And like you said, yeah, that was like an anecdote that I think kind of shows some of what he's dealing with, and just overall his frustration there came through pretty clearly that he just had enough. Yeah, I don't know that it had to end like this. Like I feel like it's kind of interesting that last year, and as he said, was a disaster, and his exact quote was something to the effect. It's not his exact quote; it's actually a paraphrase. But he said, "Last year ended as a disaster. It was my job to fix it. I looked for a solution. I thought we had solved it. Obviously, we didn't, and that was enough." And then he also talked about how he does not know how to go forward with this team. And he said, and so he can't commit to doing that, and that's why he stepped away now. But I thought it was interesting that his response to last year was to almost double down on the same approach and getting a bunch of portal 1-year guys. Because let me ask you a question, and this is all speculation. If we had not done that, so let's say we didn't get Lynn Kidd, we didn't get Brandon Johnson, we didn't get Jalen Blackman, we didn't get AJ Staten. Or maybe
what if we got Michael Brown Jones? I don't even know how he's doing, by the way.
No, but let's just say we didn't play that game, right? Instead, so we did bring in a robust high school class, right? Let's say we keep Matthew Cleveland. We bring in that class of kids. We get some maybe low. Actually, I guess Staten McRae and Jalen Blackman came from smaller schools. Brandon Johnson, everyone's throwing bags at. So it was, even though he came from East Carolina, that would have been tough. Let's say we didn't play like the high level NIL game. I don't know what we paid, but I'm sure Lynn Kidd and Brandon Johnson were expensive.
Lynn Kidd was. Brandon Johnson, I don't think he was. Like Lynn Kidd, I think it was rumored like $750K to like a mil or something.
So let's say we chose not. Let's say Coach L was like, I don't want to play that game. Forget the fact that we're 4-8 or whatever. What's it, 4-8? Is that what we are?
Yeah, I think so.
Whatever. We have 4 wins.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Right. Forget the fact that like pretty much any other approach would result in a better overall record. Let's just say we didn't do that. And instead, he was running out Divine, Austin Schwartz, Jaleel, Matthew Cleveland, Johnson Arigu, maybe Basama, a guy from Yale again.
Well, Nigel still too, or
Nigel I think was staying regardless. So Nigel, you can't tell me. No, you can't. I'll let you tell me if you want, that he wouldn't be enjoying coaching the team a lot more than he is right now. And I'm confounded by his decision to approach the portal that way and then come back and say, I really want to just teach kids. Because I think the school would have given him the room to do that. And if we were playing a bunch of young guys and they were getting better game by game.
Well, yeah, and then maybe we got some transfers that were like sophomores that didn't really get
some younger transfer and give him the chance to construct a team. I think, I don't know. To me, it's bizarre he chose this approach based on the way he laid out his timeline of after the Final Four, 8 kids in the portal. And, basically, again, I'm putting words in my mouth, but saying that kind of broke him a little bit. And then last year being a disaster that he didn't choose that. Hey, let's see if we can develop some kids here, because that's what he loves to do. So it's kind of weird that he went down doing something he didn't like to do. He's like Nick Nolte in Blue Chips.
You think after the press conference he walked out to like a bunch of kids that are playing basketball? Yeah,
he's gonna go coach a small high school in the Midwest now.
All right, guys, let's do a 5-man weave.
No, but I mean, because I don't. Again, we keep throwing all these big name guys and this big name money around, and like Shane Larkin and Kenny Kaji and that team. None of those guys. I think Reggie Johnson might have been the highest recruit on that team. Right. I mean, these are not. Sheldon McClellan and Angel Rodriguez were, there were transfers in, but they weren't big time guys. Kamari Murphy, like these are not. They came from bigger programs, but they weren't coveted. Like he went and did the work of identifying, hey, these are guys I think I can coach up. And instead, there was no opportunity. Like maybe you're right. Actually, you probably are right that he thought this would be his last year, regardless. Maybe that is what drove that decision. But it's such a bizarre choice to make if you're like, I really just want to coach these kids up. Then get kids that are coachable. Because there's
Yeah.
no universe in which you're going to get Lynn Kidd in here and coach him up when he's a fifth-year. It's not a knock on Lynn Kidd. He's a finished product.
Yeah.
He's a fifth-year senior. He's very polished in the post. He's got his game. He's a good player. Does not knock on him. It's just that you're not going to really be able to coach up someone that developed. Like, you really, if you want to coach guys up, like you said, it's younger portal kids, freshmen. You know, again, who's more receptive to that? You probably then don't want to go swimming in the deep end of the NIL pool because they're going to be less receptive to that coaching as well. And that's not really that different from what he was doing here 10 years ago.
It's true.
So that was the part that was a little bit confusing to me. That I feel like the version of like what he likes about coaching is still there. If you go with that approach, now you have to be at a school like ours that, again, because it's him and he absolutely earned this right. We would have been patient with him. Like if it was a younger team that was developing over time, and we're like, man, next year we're going to be really good if we can keep this core together. Everyone would have been patient with that. It's when this roster's gone again. Next year, going to do this again. And I think that's also part of one of the reasons he just left now is like, there's no point in me playing this out, and there's no point in me. I'm not doing this again. I'm not rebuilding this roster again. I think it's a rough one. There's no good answers. I mean, we talked about this a lot as people were like, oh, they got to play this guy and they got to pay that guy. I'm like, this team is not. There's no fixing this, and that he concluded that too. It's just, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. He said that. I was like, I don't know how to fix this. This is broken. I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it didn't matter who was playing. It was the overall identity of the team, you know.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because part of what we now in 2020 hindsight and context, part of what we were complaining about was with some of like, why do we hedge the screen so much? It's opening the court up. That works a hell of a lot better when you have guys that have been together longer and you've coached them up and they're able to rotate. They know how to play off of each other. Then, hey, here's a bunch of players that we just discussed, right? And so I think
it worked when we had Norchad and Jordan Miller because they knew how to rotate and everything. But once you have guys that don't have that, it's
right. And I think that is part of. And I think that's part of his frustration. And we were putting it under, hey, you got to adapt to the players you have. But I think he's just like, I'm never going to have the players together for a long enough, consistent amount of time to actually do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's necessarily true, to be honest, because I still think you have the ability to do that. Because again, the Elite 8 to Final Four team roster turned over pretty heavily. It was just Jordan Miller and Isaiah Wan. The rest of the starters were different.
I mean, yeah.
No, but that's my point, right? No, I understand the quality of those players, and they were the glue that made both those teams. Actually, I mean, Jordan Miller was not the Jordan Miller we all remember from the Final Four team on the Elite 8 team. That was Charlie Moore's team. That was Isaiah Wong's team, and that was Cam Magussy's team.
Yeah, I will say the second half of the season.
No, he started to come on. He wasn't even starting in the first half of that year.
No, he wasn't.
And so I think we didn't have that Jordan Miller on the Elite 8 team. But my point is, if you lose your point guard, we'll just call him wing because Magusty and Wong were kind of both playing the 2 and the 3, and your center. And then you go a step further. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like it was still doable for him. And I'm wondering if some of the frustration of all the garbage swirling around college basketball broke him as much as the actual team. And I'm not talking about just like, oh, we have to play this NIL game. I can't do it. Because he kept saying, like, I'm not the right person. Maybe someone else can do this. I can't do it. I think he can do it.
He doesn't want to.
Yeah, that's
what it is.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do it. Because I think he can.
When he says, I can't do it, it's just he doesn't want to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he can. And I also now, like I said, we would have given him the time and space to do it. I don't think he would have gotten that after this year. So,
yeah,
I think the only way he was coaching this year is if he played that high level game, like got an investment of infusion of cash and basically tried to assemble another super team or whatever for a 1 year run, because they weren't going to allow him to patiently build a roster that would hit in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he obviously this is going to happen, in the next few years, regardless. I think, to your point, Matt, maybe even before they decided this was going to be his last year. But yeah, it's not. He's always been I guess to me, one of the the things that, and again, we talked about this extensively. Yeah, no, he's definitely not having fun anymore. I think we talked about this on the show on Monday, but for me, I guess the whole part about this whole thing, the way he described it in the press conference, kind of what's transpired, not just this week, but this year, back half of last year, is I have spent, almost 15 years watching this man defy the odds. He's old, who gives a shit? It's Coach L, right?
Yeah.
And so when he's 75 years old, I'm like, oh, it's Coach L. Doesn't matter. He can be 175. And I think for me, kind of the part that caught me off guard is I'm just used to this man, and you talked about this earlier, just resurrecting everything, and everyone's saying he can't do it, and him doing it anyway. And it was jarring to me to have those words, "I can't do it," come out of his mouth. Because this is someone that always does it. Everyone always been telling him he's too old for 10 years. Didn't matter. They fired him after that Dayton game the year we went to the Elite Eight. The fans did. Everyone, like, this guy's got to go now. He's a good run. He's done. No. We're up at halftime in the Elite against Kansas that same season. So just to see him throw the towel in, man, never thought I'd see the day. I thought, again, we talked about it, I thought he'd retire and be like, all right, I'm going to coach this season out. It's time for a new voice. Let's have a good rest of the season. Just that he's just like, I can't do it. I can't win anymore. I can't. Oh, no, he doesn't have to defend. He doesn't have to defend a single damn thing. He's just, the way he was explaining it, it was jarring to me to see him quit. Because he's always been told he can't do this, he can't do that, he's not capable, the school's not doing that, and he's always overcome that. Yeah. And he himself, that's the jarring part. It's not like someone else came to him and like, no, you're not doing it. He himself said, I can't do this. That was jarring for me. Because he multiple times said, I failed. I can't do this. And you could tell he took it personally. It's like his self-reflection is, I am failing here and I can't fix it.
Did you hear the part too where it went in and out for me, the audio, so maybe you can clear this up. But someone asked him a question and he said something along the lines of like, oh yeah, he's like, you need to, it cut out, so I didn't hear all of it. But he's like, oh yeah, you need to take these shots before 3-point shots or something. And he's like, he was like, I tell the guys in the back that all the time, but they don't listen to me.
Yeah, I think his players were standing in the back. But
yeah.
No. So the question, this was someone, because again, one of the things he talked about a lot in the press conference is how much he likes teaching and coaching. He loves practice. He loves his basketball camps. This is, I think, a reporter. I don't know who asked the question. They only identified by name. I think Gary Furman asked one. Michelle Kaufman asked some questions. But then this was someone that had gone to his camp. So he was talking about what he teaches at camp. And he's like, do you still look for a good 2 before shooting at 3? And the guy said, yes, I do. So I can't get these guys in the back to listen to me because they just jack up threes, which is kind of how we made the Final Fours. I don't. Other than that Texas game, but that was about that. Again, he talked a lot about teaching and coaching. I'm interested to see what they did talk about. Keeping him. Talking about a future role with the program. We know Coach Myers, like on the speaking junket now, fundraising, doing that kind of stuff. I don't know if he would be interested in something like that. But yeah, he talked so much about teaching, and he actually did reference potentially teaching a class at Miami. But he did talk a lot about how he likes to teach kids how to play basketball. So there's a way for him to stay involved in the program and do that. Not sure exactly how that would work. But yeah, that was just an extension of that conversation because the reporter had mentioned he went to his camp and he was talking about the stuff he teaches at his camp and how he can't get these players to listen to it. Which is interesting because I assume that was I mean, we have talked about a lot about how we launch up threes. I thought that was intentional. So you're just to be clear, you're telling me when Stat McCray does a crossover and step back three, that was not intentional, and you left. I mean, he's just choosing to take those shots.
Oh man.
But anyway, yeah, no. To me, the biggest takeaway was he concluded he can't do it, and that is something I never thought I'd see the day. I could see him in his head going through the gears and saying, they're going to force me out. I'd rather retire and leave on my own terms versus what happened, which is him basically saying, I can't do this. I can't be successful anymore. Again, someone that spent his entire career being told he can't do it and doing it.
Oh, man.
Maybe he just didn't want to go to Boston.
Maybe.
That's where they're going on January 1st. He's like, I'm not going to freeze my ass up there. He did say he was staying in Gables. So
it was weird watching the intro, realizing that the two, both coaches are gone from the last picture.
I know. Melissa, I think tweeted about that as well.
Yeah.
Coach Meyer and Coach L. And I don't think this is oversharing from Katie, but she did tell us, she had decided before that season that was going to be her last season as well. She obviously didn't tell anyone. So she actually said the way the team got snubbed almost made her. I can't go out like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but she had. So I do too. That might bolster your point that he kind of thought, okay, one last hurrah. Let me just get the best players I can, talent wise. And maybe that's part of his realization that the game, he just drifted away from what he actually coaches for. It's never been about, even though he talked about this, it was never for him about winning the national championship or making the Final Four, the Elite Eight, or Sweet 16. Those were byproducts of him being an amazing coach and builder of talent. And so that those successes fell out of the process. And I think he probably shifted a little bit to targeting the end goal when actually all he's ever done here was bring in high character kids and throw people off the team if they're not, and really grow good human beings and future leaders and men, and taught them how to play basketball. And when you do that repeatedly, then what fell out of that process was the success. It was just him doing what he knows. And I think he stopped doing what he knows to try and meet this, compelling need to go beyond the Final Four. I mean, there's literally only 2 more games he could win.
Yeah.
He took it so far that, and then I think part of this last 2 years has been, how do I get to that championship? And it drifted away from, how do I just do what I love doing, which is getting these young kids in there and coaching them and teaching them. And he's so good at that the winning just came naturally. It was not the goal. He didn't come in here and be like, we're going to make the Final Four. He came in here and was like, I know how to build a program. I'm going to do it this way. And he did to unbelievable amounts of success. But it was never intentionally like, let's assemble the roster and let's go for it. It was always, I'm going to coach these guys up and we'll see where they land. And because it's him doing the coaching and him doing the talent identification and development, landed well. And then the last couple of years just hasn't. What, you want 2 pull-ups? That's going to get confusing.
I mean, Toledo's men's coach is actually pretty good.
Anyway, how about I've been impressed with the Barons. I feel like you guys
bring me and Brendan in.
Yeah, bring them in, man. They're dominating down there. I mean, it's a little bit of a step up level wise, but I have confidence. I feel like we could get an interview finally with the head coach.
I mean, he might be.
Actually, we kind of already did because he's been on the show.
We've had him on already.
No, but more seriously, it'll be interesting. And again, we'll talk about this certainly on the show more so than now. But I would say, actually, we didn't explicitly mention this. It was obviously implied throughout, but effective immediately. So Bill Courtney is now the interim head coach.
Yeah.
Which we never actually.
Well, so here's my thing, because
Uh-huh.
I feel like a coach leaving mid-season is kind of rare unless he gets, fired for some reason. When do you think the interview process, I know we're not going to talk specific names and everything, but like, when do you think the process gets started? Is it now, or is it?
I mean, I'm sure there's back channels. So much of this stuff happens through agents. I think that's who they're talking to, probably not the coaches directly. I'll tell you right now, every agent in the country has already reached out and said, I have these people that are interested. That happens pretty much immediately. Now, where we're going to formally start doing something, it'll probably be end of the season, because we also, again, and Radakovich was very clear on this. You don't have to believe him if you don't want to. I certainly do, and Coach L's telling us exactly why he left now. They did not want him to leave. Coach Radakovich tried to convince him to stay. So this is not working on the university's timeline. This is working on Coach L's, that I just don't want to. Yeah. I don't want to do this anymore. So I don't know that it necessarily. I don't know that it necessarily will accelerate our timeline. I think what's going to do is it's an ACC school. We do have NIL money, maybe not $1 million a player NIL money, but we have NIL money, and it's in Miami. So there's going to be, Bill talked about this earlier, everyone's saying it's a coveted job. There's going to be a lot of people that want this job for the same reason Coach L wanted this job. He's like, I always dreamed of being a coach in the ACC. It is still, the basketball on the court is not there, but it is still the premier brand in ACC, in college basketball, is the ACC, and so you're coaching in that conference. I'm sure Lou had a good point. I'm sure he's got his list ready. I think Matt's kind of more asking, when does he start pursuing that. Right now, agents will be reaching out saying, my guy's interested here and there. It's so, we haven't had like an actual coaching search in so long. I don't know how we're going to pursue it, if we're going to wait till it's, obviously I talked to some of the higher sought after candidates. You do have to wait until the season's over anyway. So I don't know that, we necessarily try to accelerate any of that. I do think it will be. I know people are, they're talking. Obviously, Coach L has a coaching tree. I'd be pretty surprised if we leverage any of that.
Jay Larinaga.
We got to put Katie's name on the court too. We need both. But anyway, but yes, definitely Jim Larinaga court is. I think it's probably happening at some point. I think it has to. But yeah, I don't know, because I know I saw Chris Caputo's name down. He's obviously coaching GW right now. He's got I'm facing the name Temple's coach is also one of his guys.
Oh, Fisher.
Yeah. So, but I think this is going to be a clean break.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if we.
Next time we do a show, I got a list of names already.
Okay. All right. So we'll do that next time. But in terms of timeline, I think this is Coach L's decision. Well, Melissa, how about we have you on as, a co-host, and we'll break this down. My fault. I started the conversation, so we're going to do a speculation out of respect to Coach L, obviously, and in his career here. And it's not the day to start talking about moving on from him. It's the day to honor and respect someone who has turned us into a legitimate program. I think the best thing you can say for him is, when people mention, when big time recruits, put Miami in their top 4, top 5, when Miami goes and wins basketball games against Duke or North Carolina, whatever, it's not a surprise anymore.
Yeah.
It used to be news. It's not news. Of course they do. It's Miami. They do things like that. And that's how much he's elevated the program. I don't think you can say anything. It's hard to give, we can talk about the laundry list of actual, ACC championships, Sweet 16, Final Four, and Elite Eights. But Miami is treated seriously as a basketball school, and that is immeasurable. So that's when I look back at his era, we can all talk about the individual seasons, the moments, but to me, he has made this into a program that is not a joke when it comes to basketball. It's now a serious. People like, that's Miami. That's a real program, and that's because I am. So that's ultimately how I view his legacy here, more so than the wins and losses or any of that. Is he has legitimized our basketball program. And if you have any final thoughts before we wrap up here.
No, it's weird. It's still weird. Like you said, I mean, we kind of had an idea this was gonna happen, but maybe not till end of the season. But I mean, I just want to thank Coach L for everything he did for this program, and I'm sure he's still going to be around, like he said as well. We've been really fortunate to have some really good teams under him, and have some really good people play for this university. And we've had, some of them on the show, of course, and just the way they speak about him, you can, we haven't had the fortune of having him on, maybe one day, but just really appreciative of him and everything he's done for this school, this program.
Yeah, I don't think there's any better way to say it. There is no basketball program without Coach L. So it's gonna be a transition for all of us.
Yeah, it is.
With that, I guess we shall. Do you want to do it?
Oh, Vish. This has to be like a somber one. I don't even know, man. Just cut the Sox outro, man.
Cut it or cue it?
Cue it. Cut it. Cut it.
Cut
Just
it.
cut it from the show.
Yeah,
Cue it, whatever.
Anyway,
Do the thing. There you go. Melissa got it.
Don't cry.
We get buckets.
Keep it chill.
Yeah, baby.
Wear good socks.
Buckets.